I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless all.
Christopher McCandless was an American adventurer who captured the world's attention with his incredible journey into the wild. His story is both inspiring and tragic. Christopher wanted to live a life free from society's rules, so he set out on a daring adventure into the Alaskan wilderness. Unfortunately, his adventure ended in tragedy. This is the full story of Christopher McCandless, from his birth to his untimely death. Christopher Johnson McCandless was born on February 12, 1968, in El Segundo, California. He was the son of Walt and Billy McCandless, and had a younger sister named Corrine. Christopher, often called Chris by his friends and family, was an intelligent and curious child. From a young age, he loved books, especially those about adventure and nature. His favorite authors were Jack London, Leo Tolstoy, and Henry David Thoreau, who wrote about living simply and in harmony with nature. Chris's family moved to Annandale, Virginia when he was a child. There, he attended school and quickly showed that he was a gifted student. Chris was not only smart, but also determined and independent. He excelled in academics, especially history and literature. He was also a talented athlete and became the captain of his high school cross-country team. Chris pushed himself and others to run with intensity, often saying that they needed to run as if their lives depended on it. After graduating from high school in 1986, Chris attended Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. His parents were proud of him and had high hopes for his future. Chris continued to excel academically and graduated in 1990 with a degree in history and anthropology. However, during his time at college, Chris became increasingly disillusioned with modern society. He saw money and material possessions as chains that held people back from true happiness. He wanted to live a life of simplicity, just like the characters in the books he loved. Chris's feelings grew stronger after learning about his family's past. He discovered that his father had a previous marriage and that he had half-siblings whom his father had kept secret. This revelation deeply hurt Chris and made him distrustful of his parents. He felt that his family was living a lie, and this only strengthened his desire to break free from society and its expectations. After graduating from college, Chris made a bold decision. He donated nearly all of his savings, around $24,000, to charity. Then, without telling his family, he packed a few belongings into his car and drove away. He left behind his family, his friends, and his old life. Chris adopted a new name, Alexander Supertramp, and set out on a journey across the United States. For the next 2 years, Chris traveled across the country, exploring the wilderness and living off the land. He visited many places, including the deserts of the Southwest, the wheat fields of South Dakota, and the forests of California. Chris worked odd jobs along the way, earning just enough money to keep going. He met many people during his travels, some of whom became close friends. However, Chris always kept a distance, never staying in one place for too long. Chris's ultimate dream was to travel to Alaska and live in the wild, far away from civilization. He believed that by doing this, he could find true freedom and happiness. Alaska represented the ultimate challenge, a place where he could test himself against nature and live a life of pure simplicity. In April 1992, Chris finally made his way to Alaska. He hitchhiked from South Dakota to Fairbanks, where he bought a small amount of supplies. Chris was ill-prepared for the harsh Alaskan wilderness. He had a rifle, some ammunition, a bag of rice, a few books, and minimal camping gear. Despite his lack of preparation, Chris was determined to live in the wild. On April 28, 1992, a man named Jim Gallion gave Chris a ride to the edge of Denali National Park. Chris was dropped off near the Stampede Trail, a remote and rugged area. Jim offered Chris some advice and even tried to give him better gear, but Chris refused. He was eager to start his adventure and believed that he could survive on his own. Chris ventured into the wilderness and eventually found an old, abandoned bus, which he called the Magic Bus. This bus became his home for the next few months. Chris wrote in his journal about his experiences, describing the beauty of the wilderness and the challenges he faced. He hunted small game, gathered wild plants, and read books. Chris was living the life he had always dreamed of, but the reality of the wild was much harsher than he had expected. As the weeks went by, Chris began to struggle. He had difficulty finding enough food and started losing weight. The summer was coming to an end, and the weather was getting colder. Chris realized that he was in serious trouble. He decided to leave the wilderness and return to civilization, but when he tried to hike out, he discovered that the Teclanica River, which he had easily crossed in the spring, had become a raging torrent due to the melting snow. Chris was trapped. Desperate and alone, Chris returned to the bus. He continued to write in his journal, but his entries became more and more desperate. He tried to survive by eating wild plants, but he made a fatal mistake. Chris accidentally ate seeds from the wild potato plant, which he believed were safe, but they were toxic. The seeds caused him to become severely ill, and he could no longer hunt or gather food. By August 1992, Chris was extremely weak and starving. He spent his final days in the bus writing a farewell message in his journal. In his last note, he wrote, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye and may God bless all." Chris McCandless died in the Magic Bus, alone in the wilderness, on or around August 18, 1992. He was only 24 years old. His body was discovered by moose hunters on September 6, 1992. When they found him, he weighed only 67 pounds. The cause of death was officially ruled as starvation, but many believe that the toxic seeds played a significant role in his death. Chris McCandless's story gained widespread attention after his death. Journalist John Krakauer wrote an article about Chris for Outside Magazine, which eventually led to the publication of the book Into the Wild in 1996. The book became a bestseller and was later adapted into a movie in 2007, directed by Sean Penn. Chris's story has inspired many people, but it has also sparked debate. Some see him as a brave and noble figure who sought to live a life of freedom and self-reliance. Others view him as reckless and naive, unprepared for the harsh realities of the wilderness. Whatever the opinion, there is no denying that Chris McCandless's story is a powerful reminder of the dangers and allure of the wild. Christopher McCandless was a young man with big dreams and a deep desire to live life on his own terms. His journey into the wild was both courageous and tragic. While his story ended in heartbreak, it continues to inspire people around the world. Chris's life serves as a reminder of the importance of preparation, the dangers of isolation, and the powerful pull of the natural world.